We are Rogue Media Sports.
Is this house a good price compared to others in the area? Are prices going up or down? If I don't make an offer right this very moment, will I miss my chance? These are just some of the questions a home buyer might ask. And these are the sorts of questions an agent who is a Realtor can help answer. Because Realtors have the expertise, data, and access to specialty training to help you navigate the process of buying a home. They provide support, guidance, and have your back every step of the way. That's what Realtors do, because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
Hey, it's Mark Goodman.
And I'm Alan Light.
On today's podcast, Record Store Day founder Carrie Colleton is joining us to discuss the April 20th RSD special releases.
Plus, we'll talk live with our audience, the Sound Up Pod Squad, and find out who still listens to vinyl. And some updates from the Beatles universe.
Oh, good. Sound Up with Mark Goodman and Alan Light, the only music podcast that matters. Get it on Pandora, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
It is Matt, mostly with Ed Werder on the phone right now, and it seems like we were just together at the Frito Nation Productions last night recording, and boy, a lot of play today across the country on our last Doomsday Podcast and some of the stuff that came out of the Redskins locker room and the fateful call on the kick. But today, Jerry Jones, in what some would term, and I would term, an act of desperation, goes after Amari Cooper. He had been on the block for the Raiders and trades a first-round pick for Amari Cooper. Let's start with you, Ed, as we get together on this emergency podcast. What were your initial thoughts when you heard this? How surprised were you that the 3-4 Cowboys, and especially coming off a game where they actually did throw for 273 yards, how surprised were you that the Cowboys went ahead and made this move?
Well, I think it's a brilliant move of deflection by Jerry Jones. You know, it's taken all of the focus off of the risk that the head coach, Jason Garrett, refused to take for the second time in 3 road games. It may have cost his team a chance to win. It dismisses the fact that the Cowboys are a game and a half behind the division-leading Redskins as they enjoy their bye this week. But my first thought was really that Jerry Jones has to believe 3 things to trade a number 1 pick for Amari Cooper. And the first one of those is that Dak Prescott is a franchise quarterback. The second is that Cooper can make an offensive difference. And 3, that Dallas can make the playoffs this year. I mean, to me, there's no longer any equivocating. The Cowboys are making a statement that, as Jerry and Steven have contended, Dak's the franchise quarterback in Dallas. Trading a number 1 pick means they're not going to be in a position to draft a franchise quarterback after this season. And this is really the most positive thing I think that they could have done in supporting Dak. You know, as I've said, this is what I've been advocating for. If you believe in Dak as the quarterback, then you do what the Rams, the Eagles, and the Bears have done for their young quarterback and get them the necessary personnel with which to win. And I also think that this is a clear and unmistakable admission that their offseason plan at the wide receiver position was a colossal blunder. That releasing Des Bryant and turning the position over to Allen Hurns and Deontay Thompson and Tavon Austin was doomed to fail. And they've admitted that now in time to potentially save their season.
Yeah, and the only reason you can save it is because they play, Ed, in this division right now. The Redskins have the lead at 4-2. Cowboys and Eagles tied at 3-4. It's so hard to believe that you could bring this guy in here and it would make such an immediate impact, especially when you look at some of the numbers he's had with the Raiders. Actually had 2 good games early this season, and then really has been a non-factor, possibly because he's fallen out of favor there, and they knew they were going to move him, and he's been, I think, 4th in targets this season. This was the guy who, and I know you'll get into it, Ed, with some of the folks you talked to, but some of the numbers I was just seeing, and I was kind of looking, you know, his last 28 games, 60 or more yards in receiving, just 7 of those 28 games. So it's not like they're getting a guy who is coming off. He's not been horribly productive this season. He wasn't productive last season, ended up 680 yards. So you're going back and you're betting on the fact that he's more like the guy that was in his first couple of seasons. And I can't help but think, I've already seen people writing about this, but I remember being on the radio and writing at ESPN, Ed, and you remember covering this trade in 2008, at about this point in the season, it might have been like 5 games in, the Cowboys made that trade for Roy Williams. And it was a first-round pick, a third-round pick, I think a fifth-round pick was in there, maybe it was a seventh-round pick. And Roy Williams, that turned out to be, a horrible trade. And so at this point, it seems like a lot to give up. I have a hard time, Ed, seeing them getting, a huge return for this guy.
Well, in terms of history, obviously, I think, for all the criticism that we've delivered to Jerry Jones in his role as general manager, that his worst trades have really been at this position. This is the third time he's traded for a number one veteran receiver. He traded 2 firsts for Joey Galloway in an effort to get Troy Aikman back to another Super Bowl late in his career. And as misfortune would have it, because of injuries to one or the other, they never connected on a single regular season pass before Aikman retired. And then he gave up a first and 3 other picks for Roy Williams, as you mentioned, and now Amari Cooper. I think the first 2 were epic failures. I think that if you're hoping this can work out, you're attaching your faith to a couple of things, one of which is that Amari Cooper is just 24 years old. And his salary this year is completely manageable. It's under $1 million. Next year, he makes Des Bryant money. He's going to make $14 million next year. And really, you have to assume that the Cowboys are going to extend him at some point here in the near future because of the investment they've already made in him of a number 1 pick. And I think this has the potential to create some discontent in the locker room, primarily with Cole Beasley, whose numbers are better than Amari Cooper's, and who so far has been stalemated by the Cowboys in his attempts to get a contract extension that would pay him close to $10 million. And Cooper's going to make, $13 million to start with, and he hasn't even, caught a single pass here. But if you look at the numbers, the Cowboys have the top 150, top 200 receivers. Cole Beasley is the highest rated Cowboy guy at 45. Then it's Michael Gallup, the rookie, at 114. Zeke Elliott, your running back's at 120th. Allen Hurns is 129th. Tavon Austin, who's hurt, is 147th. And Deontay Thompson is 177th. Amari Cooper is 73rd, and he's already had his bye week, and he's in the middle of a bad season, I think in part because the Raiders' young quarterback Derek Carr, who everybody expected John Gruden was going to come in and make a reclamation project out of, has struggled maybe more than he ever had at any point in his career. And, yeah, there are questions about Cooper and not only his performance, but his love of the game, his interest in being a great player, his work ethic, what kind of shape he's in. And I guess these questions will begun to be answered here in the next couple of weeks. The Cowboys acquire him during their bye week, so they have plenty of time to work him into their system. I just think this sets the stage for a thorough evaluation of Jason Garrett and Scott Linehan as the offensive masterminds of this football team. At the end of the season, Jason Garrett's not going to have any excuses. The front office went and got him players after, like I said, the gaffe that they started the season with, which was the belief that, they didn't need you don't need a number 1 receiver in this league to have an excellent passing offense. That's been proven dead wrong, and they've now admitted that. And they've done what they can, I think, at this point to rectify the problem. The question is Amari Cooper going to perform as an elite receiver? And really maybe the only thing they have to justify, Matt, is let's assume that they were going to finish 8-8. Is Amari Cooper better than the receiver that they could have drafted next year at that position? Because they're basically eliminating the possibility that they would have decided in the next 10 games that Dak Prescott is not an elite quarterback and we better go draft a quarterback with our first-round pick. That's out the window now. So now they're going to have to invest a lot of money in Dak Prescott going forward in the near future as well.
I think you're right, and they are under the belief that the Dak Prescott of his rookie season is the one they can tap into again, and whoever sold Jerry this bill of goods that they could go into this season and function with this current quarterback to wide receivers. It'll be surprising if any of those people are still around. Now they'll have a chance. Maybe some of those people, if you want to believe Scott Linehan was one of those, I believe he was. He'll have a chance to call the plays, work Cooper in, see how much this can help. But you're right. This is doubling down on Dak Prescott and this season. Basically not giving up on this season and saying, in this weakened NFC East, we think we could turn something around. And you've seen, Ed, the Texans sitting there 0-3, and the Cowboys, I think, based on when they were 1-3, they're sitting there 4-3 now and headed in the right direction. Jerry always is going to look at optimism. Isn't it funny though that this is the owner that loves to be a risk taker, and he got a head coach who seems to be completely different than he is. I mean, we spent part of last night talking about his game management and the way he decides on things. So it'll be interesting. That said, I bring up Jason Garrett to say this to you, Ed. I have to think, and I'm sure you've been calling around, and I want you to share some of this information. I have to think that Garrett's mentor in coaching, Nick Saban, and he coached under him with the Miami Dolphins at one point, and it looks up to him a great deal. I would have to think he checked in with him on Cooper and got whatever feedback made him comfortable. Not that Garrett had to be the one to completely sign off on this, but I assure you that Saban was involved in this process. But Ed, as you kind of have run some traps on this, what are some of the initial takes coming in from around the league on this trade?
Well, the first thing I'd like to say to your point about the Alabama influence, you're right that Garrett coached with Saban. He envies what he's built at Alabama. He knows that their top line players come out as ready to perform at the top of the league level prospects, and Cooper obviously was the 4th overall pick in his draft class. And the Cowboys could have had another Alabama receiver, Calvin Ridley, with their first-round pick this past year, but I think justifiably chose to, bolster the defense with Leighton Vander Esch, and he's played well. But Cooper came out of the draft as a much more highly regarded prospect than Ridley, who has performed exceptionally well early in his rookie season with the Atlanta Falcons, who obviously have a lot of weapons and a very established elite passing quarterback. But just, I think from the perspective around the league, it's, here go the Cowboys, paying too much for a player. I mean, if you look at recent, wide receivers who have been traded around the league, the Cowboys seem to have paid a high price to acquire this particular player. I mean, Brandon Cooks went for 1st and 6th round picks. Kelvin Benjamin went for 3rd and 7th round picks. Jarvis Landry, a 4th round pick and a 7th round pick. And Josh Gordon, who obviously is in a different category because of his off the field issues and all the suspensions, went for a 5th round pick to New England. So there have been a lot of receivers traded recently.
Yeah, I think that was a 4th round pick, but yeah, I know what you're saying.
Few, if any, have commanded the price that the Raiders got out of the Cowboys for Amari Cooper. And, Reggie McKenzie, the general manager of the Raiders, who have been accused of, junking the season and trying to, get high picks and accumulate picks, having now traded 2 of their 3 best players, Khalil Mack and Cooper. Reggie McKenzie basically said that he talked to Stephen about Cooper for the first time on Friday, that Stephen, said he was going to call back on Monday. Stephen called back today and basically just offered the 1st round pick. So you have to think that their offensive performance in the game against the Redskins was a big factor in their ultimate decision to pay the ransom that the Raiders were demanding for Amari Cooper. Cowboys
couldn't even have said the 2nd round pick. I mean, did he have to start with the 1st round pick today? My goodness. I mean, I think that's what the reaction around the league seems to be from all circles, that what you just said, they paid too high a price. Did you really have to give up a 1st round pick for Amari Cooper? And But I guess hey, desperate times call for desperate measures, and that's what we've seen today.
I think there was competition for the player. The trade deadline's a week away, so there was still some time. But the Raiders had the leverage of the Cowboys being in this window, where they are best equipped to get him ready for the next game and to make an impact at home on Monday Night Football. All things that will appeal to Jerry. There's going to bring an enormous focus to next week's game on Monday Night Football against the Titans at home to Jerry as general manager, making a major move, to support his young quarterback and his beleaguered coach. So that would appeal to Jerry. And beyond that, two teams in the division wanted Cooper. The Redskins wanted Cooper. The Eagles apparently offered, according to one report, offered a second-round pick and were rebuffed. And the Indianapolis Colts apparently had interest in Cooper. So that was the leverage, I think, that the Raiders had, and they appear to have used it masterfully.
Yeah, I would say so, Ed. And boy, I tell you, this is an interesting day on the heels of that loss. I think you said something that resonates with me early in our emergency podcast, and it was the fact that Jerry seems to be great at changing the narrative at times. And so we wondered, okay, he didn't speak after this game. Second time he did this season. Canceled his radio show tomorrow. What was he doing? And so this now giving up a first-round pick is a pretty expensive diversionary tactic. So it's not all about that. But, boy, does he love to own and change conversations, and that is what he is able to do today as the Cowboys trade for Amari Cooper. And we'll see. I mean, what I'm trying to think back, Ed, is obviously Roy Williams had some good times in Detroit. It did not work out here at all. Galloway put up huge numbers with Seattle. It did not work out here. It's not like we have just a load of examples where a guy kind of fades for a season and a half like Cooper has. He gets scenery, and then his numbers kind of spike back up there. So we shall see. But I would say it's fairly rare when you do something like this, and then you see a guy kind of revert back to what he was, which he seemed to be on the pace. And again, this is a lot about Derek Carr. I mean, the fact that this guy seemed to be an ascendant quarterback that we're going to be able to build around for years and years, and he has regressed in a big way, and it happened in a hurry. So, I think
I would still say the vast majority, if you ask general managers, you can start your franchise and your quarterback can be Dak Prescott or it can be Derek Carr. I still think almost everybody would take Derek Carr. So, and by no means do I think that this is a solution to all of the Cowboys' offensive problems, but I think it's going to alleviate some of the pressure and get people out of the box so that their run game can be more effective, and Ezekiel Elliott can have the kind of effect that you want him to have from week to week. You're not going to be playing against stacked boxes all the time. I think it's going to free up Cole Beasley to get a lot of one-on-one coverage. But it's not going to solve the problems with the offensive line. Dak Prescott's been sacked 16 times. That's a trademark of a losing team, and there are only 3 teams that have given up more sacks so far than the Cowboys, and only one of those teams has a winning record, and that's the Houston Texans. So this isn't a solution to all of their problems, but I do think that ultimately solving your offensive problems and giving your quarterback a chance is a matter of acquiring good players, as often as you can. And I think they've acquired a good player. I think the only issue you can take issue with is the price they paid and whether it's too much. In a year where it's hard to imagine the Cowboys can go win an NFC championship game or become a viable Super Bowl contender with what we've seen so far from the Saints and the Rams. And so they're just playing to try to win the division and get in the tournament at this point.
Exactly. I have in doing some homework on Amari Cooper is, one of the things they talked about is they believe Dak needs, you remember that? Was that when we were talking about how Troy Aikman, was a guy who, and was able to anticipate the throws, but
needs people who run precise routes and are where they're when they're supposed to be there.
And this guy fits that description. He is known as an elite route runner who is able to get separation, and really that is a huge strength of his. Now, he's not as powerful a specimen or anything. He's a 6'1", 220 guy. He's got plenty of size. He's not like Dez. He's just going to overpower people and go up and win on balls, but he does get separation, which I think is such a huge thing with what Ridley, Julio Jones, receivers like that just run such beautiful routes, especially Julio, that they get open. Now, Ed, I'm glad that you made such wonderful points. I'll admit that while you were making some of those points, I was trying to check to see if I'd heard back. There is a GM in the league, in the AFC, that just reached out to me and just said, "First round pick, exclamation. Wow." But then said, hey, they got their, they said they have their number one now. So, right. I mean, there's a belief that this guy is a legitimate number one wide receiver. Well, I think it's kind of like
if you watch what we've seen recently from Dak Prescott, this concept of not having somebody who's clearly your best receiver and the guy you can count on in big moments, I don't think that's been good for Dak. If you watch Dak, he has a really hard time, I think, going through his progressions. And so if you give him a guy that you can say, hey, he's going to be open 70% of the time on this route, then I think that gives him a more confident feeling in the pocket that he knows where to go with the ball pre-snap. I think the things you said about Amari Cooper are true. That he's got good speed. He can separate. He's a precise route runner. There have developed questions about the quality of his hands. You know, if you look at the receivers in the NFL who've had the most drops since 2015, he's on the list. It's Michael Crabtree with 26, Demaryius Thomas also available in a trade with the Broncos at 24, Mike Evans at 22, and Amari Cooper at 22. So he's got the third most drops in the league since 2015.
Okay, good for the Cowboys to be back in that category. And after, well, it'll be interesting. You know, what you hope is this, and this, I guarantee you, we'll hear about this. What Jerry's going to hope, and everybody that follows Cowboys, or especially fans of Cowboys, are going to hope, is that a change of scenery. And you do see this work from time to time in sports, where they basically soured on him to some extent, wasn't getting the targets. Obviously, Gruden's kind of wanting to move some folks out, to get his people in there, and to go to a place where they're so excited about him that they gave up a first-round pick, where they truly, and it's not just a mercenary, okay, we want this. I mean, you're right what you said. I mean, they have to be thinking about doing an extension with this guy. That he's going to a place where they're truly excited about him and desperately need him to be good. So you would have to think that would give him a jolt from just his psyche and his morale, I would think.
And you know, we all saw that Michael Irvin has been one of the biggest advocates of the Cowboys acquiring this specific receiver, saying that, you know, he's the guy who can be the difference maker that they lack in the passing game right now. That remains to be seen. But I think things look significantly better when you can put Cooper out wide with Beasley in a slot and have Michael Gallup on outside at the other position. And when Tavon Austin comes back, you can put him in the slot, and you got two great slots and theoretically two pretty decent outside receivers. I don't think they have that personnel now.
No, I think you're right. And so it'll be fascinating. Just as a reminder to folks, he has been in the concussion protocol. Amari Cooper has, so we'll see, how, I don't know if Tony Romo diagnosed him with that or actual doctors did, but he will monitor that situation. But Ed, appreciate you jumping in there. Obviously, Mark Friedman, on a busy day for him, we just sort of dropped everything because we needed to get in there and react to this. And always good to our audience out there expects this kind of thing, and we want to deliver that to them. So, Ed, I really appreciate it. And Frito, thank you as well. And we will bid you farewell on this special episode of the Doomsday Podcast.
It's one thing falling in love with a house, picturing yourself moving in and calling it home. and quite another navigating the world of price negotiating, mortgage lenders, and finding the budget that works best for you. An agent who's a Realtor can make understanding that world easier. Realtors have the expertise, access to proprietary data, and tools to help you get from imagining living somewhere to actually doing it. That's the kind of help we can provide. Because that's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best not sound you've ever heard.